We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on a Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
Thank you. I'd just like to, as my remarks this morning, I'd like to recognize the fact that we had a float in the Santa Claus parades that was very, very well received. And I'd like to thank Kersley for all of her work and for the staff that took part in it. And it was very well appreciated in both Minden and Haliburton. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda. Before I move on to the agenda, I would just like to maybe move Sue's presentation from section B1 to immediately following the approval of the agenda.
That the November 26, 2025 Haliburton County Council agenda as amended be approved.
Someone move. Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ferry. All in favor? It's carried. This morning, Council, we have presentation, Haliburton County Public Library 2026. Oh, Sue. Oh, Sue. Sorry, Sue. Rainford.
Good morning, Warden Burton and members of council. Before you is the bi-monthly Community Safety and Wellbeing Status Report for November 2025, largely following up with updates to projects, programs, events, and other items that were detailed in the September bi-monthly report. Since then, as detailed in this report, the second Haliburton County Service Providers Expo was held in Minden in early October, bringing together about 60 service providers from 40 organizations and agencies within Haliburton County or who serve Haliburton County to meet, network, information share, and collaborate face-to-face. For the second year in a row, this event has been very positively received by those who attended and continues to provide a helpful, focused networking opportunity for service providers to connect in one space, learn from each other, and move forward providing best services for residents or even planning on programs to collaborate on because they had that moment to chat face-to-face. Sometimes the attending service providers learn more about programs that are available here, often learning about programs that they didn't know existed, but that might be helpful for the clients they see. There's a very audible buzz during the networking portion of the day that is really quite powerful to hear. We are so fortunate in Haliburton County to have people providing the care and supports that they do, and it's really an honor to be able to organize this dedicated, uniquely Haliburton County Day for them. The third Identification and Community Support Clinic was held at the Haliburton Legion at the end of October. It brought together Service Canada, Service Ontario, alongside about 20 local services and organizations to serve about 70 people with low barrier services all in one spot. At this time last year, I was reporting on the first ID clinic to be held in Haliburton County, an event that has piqued the interest of neighboring communities in doing something similar. At that time, it was a pilot project. We were a small community doing this compared to other larger communities that had this in place. And so that we've just held the third with a group that is interested in hosting continued similar clinics next year is quite exciting. At the first clinic, we saw 25 people. At the second, which included tax clinics in the spring, we saw 75 people. And at this most recent clinic, we saw 70 people. Again, folks who attended received multiple supports and services. Often when they were just attending for one service, they were connected with multiple other sources to help that sometimes they didn't know existed. To give you an example, one person attended to inquire about firewood assistance with Fuel for Warmth partners. They were heating solely with a wood stove. Their EI sick benefits had expired, and they were having trouble getting through for help applying to Ontario Works and ODSP. In their short time at the clinic, they were able, with support of the partners there, to apply for help with hydro arrears, set up an overdue chimney sweep at no cost, meet with the Ontario Works worker on site who was able to get an appointment for them just half an hour later. Since that appointment, their OW benefit has been increased and is a bit more manageable. Their ODSP application has been provided to medical personnel to complete, and possible life stabilization assistance may be available. This person is now connected to the agencies that can help support them going forward, and they will have access to medical travel expense reimbursement and prescription costs, all for coming to the clinic to ask about firewood. Their joy as they left the clinic was palpable. As last year and last spring, the room was really filled with helpers again. The one-on-one thoughtful care people received there that day was incredible. And if there was downtime, service providers were able to connect with each other. Accessing even one of these services will be life-changing for some. I'm thanking the many community partners who take part in this event with no hesitation, and to our partner HHS for providing free transportation from door to door for the folks who need it. Other highlights in the report include an update on the Seniors Active Living Center programs and the freshly printed December calendar created with support from our new administrative clerk is before you. An update on winter locations for ongoing community mobile outreach efforts, and updates on the CSWB Advisory Committee, the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the Haliburton Highlands Police Detachment Board, which will have met 5 times in 2025 by the end of this year. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have about this report.
Thanks, Sue. Questions, comments? See none. Resolution?
The staff report CSWB 06-2025 Community Safety and Wellbeing September 2025 status update report be received.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Ryle, second by Councillor McKechnie. All in
Thanks.
favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sue. Now we're going to have the Haliburton County Public Library 2026 budget presentation. Welcome, Andrea.
Okay. Slides. All right, slides are up. Good morning, Warden Burton and county councillors and colleagues and people who are watching the presentation today. My name is Andrea Brown and I am the CEO, Chief Librarian at the Haliburton County Public Library. Can we switch? Yeah, perfect. You can see on this slide a row of smiling faces from about a year ago in October when we opened the Dorset Library. Just to the left, you can see our mission, which is supporting and empowering our communities by connecting people with each other and with the relevant services, programs, and collections that are free for them to access. Our library spaces are vibrant places filled with laughter, kindness, and where staff help the citizens of our community. As Haliburton County community members, you are all very well aware that there are a lot of people struggling in our county right now. We have people struggling with financial pressures, with physical and mental health, with anxiety in our teens, for example, and with loneliness and isolation. Public library spaces welcome all members of our community, and including those who don't have the means to participate in our community activities in other ways. They don't have to buy anything in order to come into the library, to participate, and to belong. Next slide, please. And HCPL is popular. We are still gathering our 2025 stats because we're just in November right now. So got a few stats from 2024. We have last year we had 7,402 card holders who were pardon me, actively using their library card. If we go on the kind of stats for Haliburton County, if we assume about 21,000 people, that means that a third of our population has actively borrowed materials from their library. We offered in 2024, 597 programs with an attendance of over 12,000 people. We have tons of website views, almost 120,000 people looking at our website. And in terms of physical circulation in 2024, we have well over 80,000 physical items that were loaned out to our community members, including 155 book club sets. That means that 155 or more community conversations happened about all different topics and themes. You know, many people use our libraries. If you imagine the average cost of a book, maybe if you assume $15, $20, that's with 80,000 physical items that people have borrowed rather than purchased, that's a lot of money in people's pockets that they can then spend within our community. Next slide, please. It's not only physical items that we circulate to members of our community, we also have an ever increasing digital circulation. So this is not including the 80,000 physical items that were circulated. Last year we had 66,640 digital checkouts. So this is over 38,000 ebooks, 16,000 audiobooks, e-audiobooks, and more than 12,000 e-magazines. Many patrons also stream movies and TV shows through our Canopy subscription, which is generously funded by the Haliburton County Rotary Club. Using the Libby app, people can download quickly and easily materials to their device from home or anywhere where there is an internet connection. So that said, many of people in our community don't necessarily have an internet connection at home or the devices that are required to download and use these items. We have actually many people still borrowing DVDs from the library. I asked a colleague to check how many DVDs specifically were circulated last year. Over 20,000 DVDs were circulated last year. There's a lot of people in our community that cannot afford Disney Plus and Netflix and all those other streaming services. And even if they can't afford that, they might not even have an internet connection, because if they're, struggling to have firewood to keep their house warm, to put food on the table, things that many of us in this room may take for granted, they're not able to access. Next slide, please. So sometimes those who don't regularly visit the library think that we're a service for books, people who enjoy reading books as a hobby. We absolutely do provide that access, but we provide so much more in modern libraries. People use our computers to read and send email, to use social media, do genealogical research using our ancestry database that the library subscribes to. Some patrons may have a phone but can't afford a cellular plan, so they come to the library with their phone, make their calls on Wi-Fi, download their things. That's inside the library often. Sometimes it's on the patio in Dysart. Sometimes it's after hours, pulling up in their car to use our Wi-Fi. Many families no longer maintain printers at home because they're just not required as often. So something that gets lots of use is our photocopiers. People come in to print address labels, for example. They get a package in the mail and they need to send it back. So they come to print address labels, legal documents to photocopy, scan things. We have our meeting rooms that are actively used, spaces for kids and teens. We offer digital skills training and one-on-one help for people. And we have classes coming in. We serve homeschool families. We serve our communities in many different types of ways beyond loaning out books. Next slide, please. Now, all of us in this room are well aware of the long power outages that we experienced over the last year. Now, with these utility outages, we did see an uptick of people coming into the library who aren't necessarily normal patrons. They came to charge their devices, to make calls to their contractors, to their loved ones, to let them know they're okay. They came to use the power to download things for their kids to do. In one instance, we had members of our local media during a thunderstorm all come in with their laptops so that they could meet and get the newspaper out on time. Next slide, please. Um, so we know that a lot of people came into the library in those situations, but a lot of people need to come in not because the power's down in an outage, but because there just isn't power at home. So, or internet access at home. If you're, you know, struggling to put food on the table for your family or to keep your house warm, high-speed internet is not necessarily your highest priority in terms of your family's budget. Next slide, please. So I just, in this slide, just wanted to highlight a few things. So the middle slide has the computer in Cardiff. So I've just been talking about, you know, if you want to apply for a job, for example, you need to make a resume, you need to send it online. We need computer access to do many, many, many things. So computer access across the county is really, really important. On the right slide up there, you can see that's in our Dysart branch that we call them the comfy chairs at the back. They're on both sides of the fireplace. This is where teenagers come after school to hang out. They're not out in the park. They are in the library where there's adults around keeping an eye on things. On the left side, we have a Friends of the Library presentation. They do great fundraising for the library, and this is at the Minden branch. Next slide, please. Now, we have so many programs, it would be impossible to kind of explain the scope of all the programming that we do for all ages, interests, and abilities. These are just a few photos of staff. We offer early literacy programs for kids, for teens, for families. We try to offer something for everyone. And again, these are free programs for people to come and access. Next slide, please. Okay. It's an important community service that we offer in terms of connecting people with each other. From people across the socioeconomic spectrum. So I've mentioned a few times people without means relying on the library, but people of, you know, from across the county in all different socioeconomic circumstances come to the library to learn, engage, to meet their neighbors, to make friends, and to have fun. I was struck in a CBC article about the Toronto Public Library's investment in services for seniors. There was a gerontologist or a geriatrician, Dr. Samir Sina, and he's talking about how extreme loneliness is equivalent to 15 cigarettes a day on someone's health and well-being. He recommends prescribing the library in order to become more connected and to alleviate that loneliness. Next slide, please. Our library system is very fortunate to have an active and engaged group of friends of the library. There's a few of them who are attending the meeting today. They do all sorts of great fundraising events, old book sales. You can see the slide on the right that was earlier this month at the Lyndon McIntyre event at the Legion. 135 community members, probably more than that, actually attended with the silent auction and the book sales and sponsors. The event brought in more than $9,000, and that's money that gets invested in the library. Next slide, please. Okay, on to the nitty-gritty of the budget. So we've talked a little bit, or I've spoken a little bit about the why that the library is important. So just there's a comparative graph here showing 2022 to the proposed 2026 budget, which is along the right side. So just to take you back a little bit, I know that the reserve budget is going to come up in our discussions. In 2023, the previous CEO resigned, and so that contributed to the surplus in 2023. In 2024, the county levy for the library was actually less than the base budget from 2023. The board was tasked with finding at least $115,000 of savings. So we did things like cut a full-time position, reduce the salaries of the two highest paid staff members through unpaid days off. We switched a full-time position to part-time. We cut areas of the collection, so no more print magazines, cut our newspaper subscription to Press Reader. We delayed hiring a new CEO, and we had delays because we weren't able to move forward with hiring a communications coordinator, systems and tech coordinator. There was a staff gapping. We need to prove that we needed these positions. We also had several longtime staff retire. 2025, so that's this year. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to add in 2024, we opened the Dorset branch as well. In 2025, the amount that we received from the county levy was less than what we received in 2023, and just about a little over $3,000 more than what it was in 2024. The delay in being able to post and fill our part-time communications coordinator role for several months meant that the position was vacant for nearly 5 months of 2025. So that will definitely contribute to potential surplus for this year. As you can see in the chart and through the materials that you have received through the county, you can see that for 2026, the library board has requested $1,337,081 from the county tax levy. This is a 9.77% over 2025, representing an increase of a little over $119,000 over the 2025 base budget. Now, included in that is a request from the library board to fund 4 additional hours at the Dorset branch library. Actually, Travis, would you switch to the next slide? Thanks. So the library board, so the staffing complement in this budget is the same as it was in the 2025 budget, with the exception of $7,500, which is being requested for a 4-hour shift on Thursdays in Dorset. We received feedback from the Dorset community requesting that there be an after-school, after-work opening time so that people who weren't available during the day or on Saturdays when they may have other lessons and commitments could access the library. You can see on this slide that for our expenses, our proposed 2026 budget total is less than the budgeted expenses in 2024, even though we have an additional branch to operate. You can also see from this slide that the vast majority of the library's budget is allocated to staff wages. We currently have a team of amazing hardworking staff who are paid by the library and who buy their groceries, put gas in their car, and use our local businesses. On Monday morning, when I saw the county's agenda published on Civic Web, I learned that the Council Liaisons Committee is recommending that the levy be no more than $1 million, as the library budget is currently the library board's proposed budget is $1,337,081. That's the request from the county levy. $1 million cap would mean finding a 25% reduction in the budget. Next slide, please. That's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I can take them.
Thanks, Andrea. Questions? No. Resolutions?
That the Haliburton County Public Library 2026 budget presentation be received as information, and it will be considered as part of the broader conversation later this morning.
Great. If someone move. Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Danielson. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Um, Before I move on to the Haliburton County 2026 budget presentation, I'd just like to say that it's being presented today for council's consideration and discussion, and that we're hoping to bring it back, or I'm hoping to have it back on December 10th for approval and consideration. Gary.
Thank you, Warden Burton. Excuse me. It's again, it's my pleasure to present with Ms. Robinson, present the draft 2026 budget for consideration and discussion. Today is the first step, and as the warden did mention, bringing it back in December 10th for final consideration, hopefully. It's from a process standpoint, the budget has been from a staff, we've been working on the budget for roughly about 6 to 7 months at the staff level, and culminating with a presentation to the Budget Liaison Committee consisting of Warden Burton and Councillors Carter and Ferry on October 27th and again on November 3rd. As you'll note in the budget document and the presentation state today is the comments and recommendations that varied from the staff presentation budget are identified within the documents themselves, and with identifying the changes being requested or recommended by the liaison committee. I think it's important that as we move forward with this, we identify that as we've been building the budget since my arrival here in 2023, with the 2025 budget being the first budget I was fully involved with, is we are developing the budget based on a series of principles that are based on fiscal responsibility, sustainability, adaptability, and accountability. Because in today's economics, the municipal level, is we have to create budgets that are sustainable and adaptable to changes that we go forward. And one of the, as a two-tier system, we have a number of areas we have to consider in putting the budget together. And one of the principal ones is also recognize the budgetary pressures that exist at the local municipalities as well. Because as we're putting our budget together, the local municipalities are also in the same process in budgeting for the services that they provide in addition to what's provided at the county level going forward, which is a consideration. But more importantly, as with any financial matter, is one of the key challenges we're faced with, and I think we've done a very good job with the structure we put together, is balancing the many competing fiscal needs that face us going forward in a responsible manner, is how we allocate the funds going forward, both on a need and prioritization basis, but also on a sustainable basis, is how can we sustain it over a number of years, not just trying to fit something into a current year. And I think that's something that results in some hard choices, but I think we've shown some creativity and some adaptability going forward, how we can maintain our service level, but also respect not only the budgetary pressures at the local level, but also the financial pressures of the community at large, as we're putting things together. And in doing so over the last couple of years, the county council has been very amenable and in putting together what I would say is can be deemed as a truly progressive budget in nature, in the sense that it recognizes the long-term needs of how we budget our money and how we prioritize where that money goes. And that may not always meet everybody's needs in a given year, but I think we can demonstrate over time how we do provide resources that allow service levels to be maintained that meet the needs of the community going forward, that may fluctuate over time. And from the staff level, when we're looking at making changes to the budget or making recommendations going forward to council, we work on a premise that if we're reducing something or taking some of the budget, we start with a premise that can we do without it for a 3-year period? Because what we're trying to avoid is just kind of moving the ball down the road year to year. And so that's one of the things when we first look at that I've challenged the directors with putting budget together, which they've done an outstanding job with over the last couple of years. The introduction of the infrastructure or the capital levy into the budget 2 years ago, we're at 1.5% dedicated infrastructure levy is working as needed. We currently sit with about a $14 million infrastructure gap that we need to address. This is a very progressive way in addressing the needs from an infrastructure standpoint, but allowing a consistency in the projected tax rates, budget to budget, because it's a consistent 1.5%. We're trying to mitigate any significant spikes in the budget going forward. Sustainability funding built into the levy itself to address things that are consistently going forward, principally around capital investments and infrastructure. And also, we have a very strong program in when we take a serious look at how we staff the county and how we address bringing new positions forward, And the last element we look at is new tax money to support staffing levels within the county. We look at compressing, consolidating or eliminating positions and using new money wherever possible, and consolidating positions to create a greater source of money for more positions. And I think that's evident with the exclusion of the paramedicine side of the table, which is funded separately through the province. Is that over the last 2 years, we've been able to reconfigure our staffing things where we have what I'm going to call 8 new positions, but they're not 8 brand new FTEs into the budget, in the sense that we recognized with vacancies, we looked at them, whether they were still needed or not. We were able to compress a number of positions going forward, introduce new positions that better met the needs that we had going forward. And of that, we have actually 8 new functioning positions that had an aggregate impact on the tax levy of $38,000. Which I think is pretty impressive, and congratulations to staff to be able to put that together. And the other piece, while not directly related in the budget this year, but we will be examining it, we're reporting back to council in the new year, is we're currently into the second phase of the service delivery review, which will look at achieving greater efficiencies in service delivery, not only at county level, but across the local municipalities as well, and opportunities for collaboration, sharing, centralization or decentralization of service, whatever provides the best level of service for the best investment going forward. So it's not a one-off process going forward. And those type of things going forward, they identify for us a number of good aspects of what I mentioned before, the sustainability of the budget going forward, and eliminate a number of peaks and valleys. There are some changes. It's a continuous improvement process for us on the budget, but I think they're designed to make the budget more accessible to everybody, make it more easy to understand. You don't need to be an accountant to understand what we're looking at from a budgetary standpoint. And we tried to make it so that anybody can pick up our budget documents and understand at least the premise by which we're spending money and where it's going for. And it allows us to do a much better job on reporting back to show to both council and the community that we're spending the money in where we said we're going to spend it, but also showing the return on that investment to achieve what we feel is the sufficient level of service and efficiencies across the board. The clarity is better, and I think one of the areas too is and Ms. Robinson is going to speak to much more detail to this, is the introduction of a much more detailed budget inclusionary form. So anything that required a greater than 3% increase to the departmental budget required to submit what we deem to be a budget inclusionary form, which identifies not only what the project is and how much the project costs, but the value of the project, any long-term impacts with respect to other departments going forward, but also where the money's coming from and the impact it's going to have on the levy. So it's a lot of detail put in there. We're categorizing them now so you can understand what the purpose behind the project is. So it's just an evolutionary thing, which I think provides much greater clarity for it. And one of the other things I'm really happy with the work that was done into this budget is we've actually started to develop and include long-term forecasting on our expenditures over time. So within this budget presentation and documents coming forward, we're actually starting to project our forecasting on our expenditure and revenue needs to 2030. I think this is an important thing to do because, as I like to say a lot, if we're not planning for Wednesday, we're planning for 1,000 Wednesdays. And we need to understand decisions we make today will impact us as we go forward, and also allows us to do a better fiscal planning process with respect to knowing when the certain needs are in, and it goes back to us balancing the priorities that are put upon us in providing service across the county. As with any municipality, a significant number of challenges we're facing putting the budget together. This is, I think, a lot of budgets for me under my belt now. And this may be one of the most challenging budget years I've faced in over 30 years of being directly involved in municipal budget generation. And the biggest challenge to us face right now is evident in our documentation is external costs. There's a lot of external costs within the structure we have in dealing with the provision of services around social services, housing, MPAC, public health, all vital services to our community, but they're out of the direct control of us. We receive the services from third parties, and we're legislatively required to pay that money to them for the services provided. So that's a significant accountability to us. And as you'll see in the documentation, those costs represent greater than 50% of the projected increases or levy increases or fiscal demands on the county come from outside sources that we don't control directly ourselves. But having said that, there are pieces that we're getting, and this is kind of the shift in the dynamic in municipal finance and municipal governance, things that we didn't have to look at 30 years ago when we were putting budgets together. Cybersecurity costs, you'll see a piece in that is the increased costs that we have going forward with those. And those aren't nice to have. Those are things, those are have to haves because to protect the property and the fiscal information of the community going forward. But also you're seeing a shift in focus and demands within the community on things that normally were outside of the sphere of influence of the county. And that's primarily focused around the community safety well-being element and some of the amazing service provided that you saw in the you heard in the presentation of Ms. Tiffin this morning. They're typically geared to providing services for the most vulnerable in our community and making sure that we can properly address how those any gaps they have moving forward and how we address them with our partners or providing service, but also as a service provider, but also as a steward of the community itself at the county level. There's an expectation or a obligation, if you will, that we make sure that that segment of the community is being addressed and how we prioritize our spending and our resourcing going forward. And we'll speak directly to some of the elements that coming forward that are new to the budget of this year. Chief Slatter made a presentation, I believe, is in October. Around the advancement of advanced care paramedicine within the community, that's being recognized within this budget this year, and also, and I'll speak much more detail to it, is the introduction of a community health levy, similar to the infrastructure levy we put in place to address the ongoing needs of providing supporting the community, the broader community health of the county of Haliburton. And as I mentioned, they're all reflected in the draft budget in greater detail. The other piece, again, it wouldn't be a budget presentation from my standpoint if it didn't talk to the significant systemic challenges we face as a result of provincial policy. The one that I've been speaking against at length over the past 25 years is the continued primary reliance on the property taxes as the basically the single revenue source we have in addressing our needs. The property tax is a regressive tax. It has no bearing on how much money you make. It's just how much your property is worth, and it doesn't take into account the impact on people that have lived in a house for 50 years on fixed income. And so we're through the East Ontario Wardens Caucus, AMO, we're continuing to lobby the province for a new fiscal contract between the municipalities and the province to address that inequity going forward. There are a lot of tools that are available to other municipalities that would be invaluable to us, that would put less reliance on the tax on the property tax levy, which is of significant importance within a municipality like the county of Haliburton, because we're 75. Our assessment base is 74% residential. Which is a very skewed a ratio. Normally in the large urban sector, which I came out of, you're looking at your residential pieces 40% or less of your assessment, where industrial commercial is picking up this, which is a much greater avenue to draw money from. We don't have that luxury here. And coupled that with the lack of the updated of the assessment of the county over the last 10 years now, it again puts greater burden on us and where we're drawing our money from, and inequity between the various social and economic gaps within the community. It's creating a bit of unfairness that we need to address. But having said all that, I think it's the work that's been done by Ms. Robinson and her finance team and the directors as well. I'm very impressed with what we've been able to put together under the challenges I've identified I've identified going forward. And I think now with that, Warden Burton, with your direction, turn it over to Ms. Robinson to get into the details of the budget.
Certainly.
Well, good morning, Warden and Council. Thank you, Gary, for the intro into the 2026 draft budget presentation. I will be presenting on behalf of the senior management team today. However, they are all here and waiting for any questions that you may have after the budget presentation. Well, the next slide. Yeah, perfect. So what's new for 2026? This year, we have updated the overview section of our budget inclusion forms to include sections for category identifier, funding or recovery, and the new levy impact. This helps council and the public easily identify why the request is being made and the total net levy impact on the levy increase. Starting with the 2026 budget cycle, we are moving some cost centers around to provide better reporting. Up until 2026, we reported land ambulance, community paramedicine, and public health under the health division. We have now renamed this to community health starting in 2026 and have moved the identified cost centers on this slide to be reported under it. Previously, these cost centers were included under the general government division. We've also created one new cost center for 2026 for the CAO Clerk's Department. This budget and expenses were previously in the administration cost center. As council will have seen it in your budget documents, and as Gary stated, we are presenting the capital budget separately from operating this year. We've made this change to improve clarity and transparency for council, allowing you to clearly see the financial pressures and make more informed decisions about priorities. As you're aware, council changed its advisory committee structure in 2020, and at which time they appointed by bylaw council liaisons to various county departments. The finance department liaisons, Councillor Carter, Ferry, and Warden Burton, were consulted during the creation of our draft budget, and their recommendations were identified within our summary document and will also be outlined throughout the presentation this morning. As the warden mentioned, our budget timelines, you're receiving the first draft today. We are hoping to get updated information from City of Kawartha Lakes by the end of the week, if any, and then taking direction from council today and bringing back a final version for approval on the 10th of December. Next slide, please. The draft 2026 levy requirement is $27.7 million, which is an increase of just over $2.7 million from 2025. The $2.7 million levy increase is a cost to the ratepayer of $20.75 per $100,000 of assessment. So if your home is assessed at $500,000, this would be an increase to your annual tax bill of $103.75. The county tax rate, as presented, continues to be the second lowest tax rate when compared to the 2024 rates of all of the counties within the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. Next slide, please. This year, the county has seen 1.48% in assessment growth, or $142.5 million. These numbers were taken from MPAC as of November 4th and will be updated for your meeting on the 10th. However, I am not anticipating much change since the 4th. Next slide. The inflationary increases refer to the additional costs required to maintain the same level of operations. This year, there's a total of $491,000 of inflation included in the levy increase. This slide provides the details of the inflation for 2026, with the majority being seen in software licensing, winter road materials, and the Public Works Capital Infrastructure Program. Next slide. As of 2026, the county will have $5.3 million of sustainable capital programming within its budget. This $5.3 million includes $173,000 of inflation and $220,000 addition to our structures program. We do continue to work on building a fully sustainable structures program with a target of $1 million. Due to high budget pressures within the areas of social services and housing, the council liaisons are recommending reducing the Sustainable Roads Infrastructure Program by $500,000. It is their assumption that the pressures will not be as high next year, and the $500,000 can be added back in at that time. If this recommendation is approved, it would be adjusted from the County Road 507 resurfacing project as identified within your budget summary report, reducing this project from 6.55 kilometers to approximately 4. Next slide. The total capital budget, net reserve, and revenue transfers is $5.3 million. Of that, $225,693 is a new budget request. All new capital projects included in the draft budget are listed here, and all are being 100% funded with reserves and/or municipal recovery, with the exception of the $6,500 M365 backup storage migration and the previously noted $220,000 towards the structures program. As we continue to attempt to address the county's $14 plus million infrastructure gap that's been identified over the next 10 years, staff are proposing to maintain the 1.5% capital levy for 2026. This would equate to a contribution of $358,500 to the capital levy reserve. This graph shows council that if you were to continue to contribute annually with a 3% increase each year at a 3% interest rate, you would be contributing almost $6.7 million towards the identified gap. This much needed investment is a cost of $3.75 per 100,000 of assessment to the ratepayer. This slide provides a visual for council of our current debt projects and remaining debt to be paid. The total debt repayments included in 2026 draft budget is just over $856,000, which does include 9 months of new debt payments for the approved building renovation project. The county's maximum annual repayment limit set within the debt policy is 15% of the county's net revenues. Based on the 2025 budgeted revenue numbers, this equates to just over $3.9 million. The county provides approximately $6.7 million in funding annually to 6 external organizations or programs. This year, almost 40% or $1.052 million of the total levy increase is being transferred to others. That equates to a 4.1% tax rate increase. Council heard from the City of Kawartha Lakes in October, requesting an increase of just over $712,000. It is important to note that with their 27% increase, it does not include any monies for their recently presented deeply affordable and supportive housing strategy. The health professional recruitment is an increase of $170,000. Of that, $120,000 has already been approved for committed incentive payments. The health unit presented last council meeting and has notified of a 5% increase. We have not yet heard from MPAC, but have included a 3% increase as their 2025 was 2.54% increase. Council heard, oh, sorry, go back, not quite done. Council did hear from the library CEO this morning. I do want to recognize that I know my numbers are about $800 less than what was included on her slides, and that is due to the 2026 WSIB rates being received, which did decrease budgets. The library, as you know, is requesting 9.7% increase or $118,000 for 2026. Due to the year-over-year surplus and large established reserve, the council liaisons are recommending a max contribution of no more than $1 million. Next slide. Net reserve and revenue transfers. The total operating budget is $15.7 million. Of that, $1.44 million is new budget request. As council can see from this slide, of that $1.44 million, only $375,000 is related to new growth requests. As previously identified, $318,000 is inflation, mainly seen in IT software licensing, winter roads, materials, vehicle fuel maintenance and insurance, and audit and legal costs. Base budget adjustments for wage and benefits of $438,000. This does not include any new positions or hours. This is strictly current staff complement with 2026 approved rates and updated liability rates. Catch-up of $181,000. That is to fully budget 2 paramedic supervisors. Council's wage rate increase, which was approved after the 25 budget was passed, and the 20% loss of OMPF funding. The pre-approvals of $128,000 consists of the old and new debt payments, including interest. There's a total of 1.5 million in operating growth expenses included in draft 1. These are offset with growth revenue and transfers from reserves for a net levy impact of approximately $375,000. Next slide. This slide and the next provide a summary of the operating growth items that have been included in draft 1. Any items that are not bolded on the slide have funding applied either from reserves or increased revenue from grant funding or local recoveries. Therefore, the bolded items are the ones that affect the levy increase. As you can see from the slide, the growth is being primarily seen within the IT department. Next slide. The ULinks programs are being funded by reserves as one-time projects. The official plan is 50% funded with reserves, 50% funded by the local municipalities at a cost of $18,750 each. Staff are recommending the addition of 6 new positions with this budget cycle. The first being a grant writer procurement specialist. Currently, grant applications management is a joint effort between all staff and departments. There's no dedicated resource for this. It's the responsibility of all staff and directors to find the opportunities, engage finance, and work together to develop and manage the application or claim. We feel the county is potentially missing out on funding opportunities due to this lack of resource. We are seeing the need for more procurement resources, not just at the county level, but also at the local levels. And this position is intended to fill the identified gaps for both. We've budgeted this position at a cost of approximately $120,000. It is anticipated that they would increase our grant revenue at a minimum $120,000 for 2026, and therefore has a net levy impact of 0. This position does have the ability to have a grant intake of up to $450,000 or more based on conversations that we have had with other municipalities with similar roles. The council liaison's recommendation for this position is for it not to be included within the 2026 budget. To assist with increasing healthcare demands within the county, the chief is recommending the addition of 3 advanced care paramedics. As the 911 paramedic service is 50% funded by the Ministry of Health, in the following year, staff have funded these 3 positions 50% from reserves until the 50% funding starts in 2027. As municipalities are increasingly targeted by ransomware, phishing, and AI-enabled threats, the Director of IT is recommending the addition of a full-time permanent cybersecurity analyst. Staff are recommending that this position be 50% funded by the county levy and 50% funded by the locals at a cost of $15,625 each. The council liaisons are recommending that this position be fully funded by the county levy. Next slide. The final position being recommended is the addition of a second GIS technologist. This new position will address increasing demands from the county and its local municipalities, and will ensure the IT department has the capacity to meet both the current and emerging GIS needs, such as the new NG 911 standards. NG 911 is not a one-time project and requires ongoing obligations of the county. The county is required to meet and maintain public safety standards under the NG 911 legislation. Staff have included this in the budget, with 50% being funded by the county levy and 50% being funded by Algonquin Highlands, Minden Hills, and Highlands East at a cost of $17,500. Dysart is not included in the split as they do have their own dedicated GIS employee. The council liaisons are recommending that this be a temporary contract position to implement the new NG 911 standard. Next slide, please. There is a total operating gross revenue of $651,000. Increased municipal recoveries for regular services such as IT, bylaw, and road maintenance, along with the previously mentioned new recoveries. There's $80,000 in increased investment revenue, $55,000 in increased tax supplementaries and write-offs, which is based on a 4-year average. The increased grant monies, as previously mentioned, for the creation of the new grant writer procurement position, and increased Ministry of Health funding for the 911 paramedic service based on the 2025 budget. Next slide. Excluding the capital levy contribution, there is a total of $450,000 in transfers to reserves included in draft 1. This is the Sustainable Capital Program transfers plus $200,000 transfer to repay the ambulance reserve for the CT scan contributions in 2024 and 2025. Total transfers from reserves included in draft 1 is just over $1.6 million for a net reserve transfer of $1.186 million. For comparison purposes, we did have a net reserve draw of $881,000 in 2025. The spreadsheet on the left includes the capital levy contributions and all transfers to and from reserves. And the overall change in the non-committed reserves is anticipated to decrease by $257,000. Next slide, please. As Gary mentioned, staff are proposing a 0.5% dedicated community health and well-being levy with the 2026 budget. This would equate to a contribution of $128,500. Similar to the dedicated capital levy, these funds would be held for community health and outreach projects as required and will help fund and stabilize this growing demand for our community. This slide shows council that by committing to 0.5% tax levy with a 3% increase annually at a 3% interest rate, you'd be investing almost $2 million in this underfunded area over the next 10 years. This investment is a cost of $1.34 per $100,000 of assessment for the ratepayer. Slide. It's important to recognize how the decisions made with this budget cycle impact the following years. Known items that should be brought to council's attention for potential impacts in 2027 is a full 12 months of new debt payments, continue to decrease the OMPF funding by 15 to 20%. It's anticipated for that to be completely phased out by 2030. Continue to build our sustainable structures program to our goal of $1 million. We have been contributing approximately $200,000 a year. The staff identified needs included within the budget summary document I've summarized here over the next 3 to 5 years. The deeply affordable and supportive housing strategy as presented by the City of Kawartha Lakes, and the council liaison's recommendations, if approved. As its staff's understanding, it is their intent to add these base budget monies back for 2027, which would be an addition of $218,000 to the library's base budget and $552,000 to the Sustainable Capital Program, as there would be additional costs in delaying that project. If we were to total the debt payments, the 20% OMPF loss of funding, $200,000 to structures program, along with the liaison's recommendations of the base budgets being added back in, that's just over $1 million or 4% tax rate increase for 2027 before we even start to plan the year, before inflation, wage and benefit increases, and or required projects or purchases. Next slide. The staff draft budget being presented today is a 7.72% tax rate increase. However, I do think the tax rate increase identified as a percentage can sometimes be misleading. So what does this budget actually cost you and I as the ratepayer? As presented, it is an increased cost to the ratepayer of $20.75 per $100,000 of assessment. So if your home is assessed at $500,000, it would be a cost of $103.75. Once you include the dedicated capital levy and community levy, that $500,000 assessed home would have a tax bill increase total of $129.20. The council liaison's recommendations result in a tax rate increase of 4.63% or $12.45 increase per $100,000 of assessment. The difference on that $500,000 home, a savings of $41.50. Next slide. And that concludes our budget presentation for 2026. And myself or any members of SMT would be happy to take any questions.
Just before we take questions, Gary,
Thank you, Warden Burton. Just a note for members of the public, we have received a number of written responses to the budget documents that were released on Monday from the public, primarily around the public library. All copies of those documentations have been provided to members of council, and they will continue. They are part of the record, and anything we receive between now and the 10th will be forwarded. Council will have that information as well as we go forward.
thank you. Questions? Liz.
Well, I've got a number of questions, but I'll dive right into the library. I'm assuming that the finance committee are making the recommendation that they are making based on the amount of reserves that the library have. And I agree that it is problematic to see surpluses year over year continuing, but requests for additional funding somehow that doesn't balance for me. My problem is, the suggestion would be then that the library use the amount of money that they've got in reserves to offset the cut that you're recommending. I'm not sure that they can legally do that based on what reserve funds are supposed to be used for. And I guess I'm looking for a bit of a response with respect to that.
Gary?
Thank you, Warden Burton, Deputy Warden Danielson. So yes, the library board has the option to request of council use of those reserve funds for library purposes. So augmenting an operating budget would be permissible under that premise.
Okay.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Warden. Yeah, to continue with the library conversation, this is my hill to die on. I disagree with the recommendation from the council liaisons. And I do understand the principle behind it. I do understand that the library board currently sits on a reserve, which is larger than it requires, given that it has no actual capital expenses in its future. So that makes perfect sense. But I think the suggestion by council liaison is also based on the premise or the assumption or the gamble that this time next year or the year after, the amount being decreased now will be brought back up to its regular level. And that for me is too high a risk. I don't think that's a gamble that I would be willing to take. I don't think unless council is ready to pre-approve that increase now, I would ever be able to support that. We don't know what next year is going to look like. We'd be running the risk that if levels do not increase next year, that the library board or that the library budget would be decimated. It would be a catastrophic trauma to the library services system at that decrease next year. And that's not a risk that I am personally willing to take. I would just further like to say, or perhaps request, based on today's conversation, that if the budget is brought back at the only meeting in December for approval, it does not give the library board and staff time to process what has been recommended, what council is going to be discussing here today. Library board and staff learned of these recommendations on Monday. And should this budget be brought back for final approval in December, there would be no opportunity for the board or staff to come back with a response, including potentially, and I can't speak for anyone at the minute because the board has not discussed this, but a sustainable spend down of reserves, which would mean that we wouldn't have to make a catastrophic change now, but there would be a plan in place moving ahead. So with that, I can only stress my disagreement with the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
So this year we were faced with this confluence of events that increased what I think 27% our costs that that for child services, social services, and housing. That's an extraordinary number. And unfortunately, as Gary mentioned, these third-party costs come to us and they're presented to us as a bill. You know, we must pay it. There's no discussion. Now, having said that, we did have discussions. We went through everything. The numbers are still to be finalized this week at the City of Kawartha Lakes budget meetings. So the one thing I'm looking forward on this is that this appears to be a one-time thing. I'm not saying that our numbers for these services are going to go down dramatically, but the increase is not going to be anything like we had this year. It was contracts, it was a whole number of things that changed that made it what it was. So, we have to look at our responsibility to the citizens of Haliburton County and how much can they absorb in tax increases. So when we looked at what could we do to mitigate this, we looked across all departments. There are recommendations here that affect IT, affect planning, affect the roads, and also the library. You make a budget, and this is your best estimate of what things are going to cost, and what revenue you're going to get in. We have sort of standards that we have that we replace a vehicle, for instance, every 8 years. Well, you don't automatically just replace the vehicle at 8 years. You in year 7, you look at it and say, you know what, this vehicle is not in as bad shape as we anticipated. We can keep it another year. And the same thing happens with roads and so on. So we looked at trying to find monies everywhere. With respect to the library, I think it's a bit of a I don't know, a wordsmithing here when we talk about reserves. The situation with the library is over the last number of years. For whatever reason, their spending has been less than the amount of money that was allotted to them. And they don't have a situation where at the end of the year they can say, oh, you gave us too much money, here's some money back. We didn't spend it all. So it's been put into this savings account, if you will, which is not really, as Councillor Dayu noted, a reserve like we have in the municipalities. When we get surpluses, we generally take those monies and we apply it to the next year's budget so that we can reduce the total levy. In the case of the library, which doesn't have any large capital at all. The county, through the municipalities, provide 8 buildings or parts of buildings for the libraries. We provide the services, the maintenance, all these things. So there's no extraordinary costs that are going to require the need of a reserve. There has to be some reserve, no doubt, because you may have to replace a computer or a laptop or something like that. But so I think you have to look at those reserves as surpluses, unspent surpluses, and these surpluses continue to grow every year. So now the citizens of Haliburton County have built up $400,000 or so worth of surpluses that are sitting in the library bank account, if you will. And so we're saying, okay, we need to find money to reduce taxes or to maintain taxes at a reasonable level for the citizens of Haliburton County. Where do we find it? We find some in our roads budget. We find some by changing some things in IT and so on. And we've got this $400,000, or the library has this $400,000 sitting in the bank account. So what we're saying is this year, they have come to us and said, I think the number may still be changing, but about 1.3 or $1.37 million for all of their programs for this year. So what we're saying is take some of the money, the surpluses that the taxpayers of Haliburton County have already given to you. We'll give you another $1 million. You're covered for your total budget. There's no need to change anything in your budget. You have enough money. And that's the thinking here. This is not a situation where we're trying to cut the library budget. And there's, at this point in time, we are not doing the 2027 budget. We are doing the 2026 budget. And the 2026 budget is such that this, whatever the 7.7% is too high a cost to pay for all the citizens of Haliburton County. And you've got money that is surpluses that Haliburton County has already given to the library. So we're saying spend that money that we've already given you, and we'll give you another $1 million. You can get all of your programs covered and nothing has to change. When 2027 comes, we are going to have a lower cost on some of our outside costs, we hope. And that's what the city of Kawartha Lakes is also projecting. And then we can relook at all of our budgets. This is not a cut in library funding. This is you absolutely can do everything you want to do with the money we've already given you and the money we're going to give you this year. So that's completely the thinking.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Other questions? Councillor Ryle.
I don't disagree with any of the arguments that I'm hearing. And I understand the whole concept of what we're doing. But it looks like we're going to wipe out the reserves this year, period. There's going to be like zero. And so that's a decision we have to make. I got that. But where's the guarantee that we're not going to end up hit with all these other bills again in 2027? There's an assumption. And you know what assume does to most people. And I have a funny feeling that that's the part that scares the heck out of me, is that if 2027 does not produce the changes that we're going to make, we will have wiped out the safety net for the library board. So I'm not suggesting that we do not use, but why use all of it in 1 year? Because you cannot see 2027. You can't see it. And so at the end of the day, are we going to be able to deal with that? Secondly, and I think if we listen to what our CEO of the library said, it's going to reduce, if we were to stay with that number again in 2027, based on 2026 numbers, we'd have to reduce the operation by 25%. we might as well close the library system. It can't operate that way. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do what we're doing. What I'm asking is, should we look at the entire amount being used in 2026? Or can we look at a prorated system where, say, we use half in 2026, which now brings their ask down significantly to something that would make more sense. In fact, their ask isn't going to be anything because the increase is being nullified by the amount of reserves they're going to get. Am I going to die on this? No, I'm just proposing it as an alternative that we could look at. That's all I'm asking you to do. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be sitting here in 2020. Well, I may not even be sitting here in 2027, but if I'm sitting here in 2027, I do not want to be looking at the same situation again. Or we have to make a decision then as to where the future of the library board is going to go. Simple.
Thanks, Cease. Other comments? Lisa?
Just a comment as to what Cease just said, and just something I always say to my kids is that when you're making a decision about something, you just have to make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. And at this time, this is the best information we have and what we have to work with. 2027, we have no idea. It could be the same as it is today, or we could be in a better position. But when making a decision today, I feel like we have to make it with the information that we have before us and do what's best for everybody in the community. And I'm not taking away from the how much our libraries contribute to the community, because they absolutely do. But I also don't think that libraries need $400,000 in reserves, which are technically a surplus, not necessarily a reserve. We haven't been squirreling that away for the library. It's surpluses that are happening because the money's not getting spent, which is different than us saying, oh, we need to invest so much into roads this year because we know we're replacing a plow truck in 27. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. I agree with what the committee has suggested, considering that it's not changing the library's budget at the end of the day for 2026 or the programming.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Ferry?
Well, I certainly agree with what the representatives Minnan have said, because you can't sit here. This council was elected to set the budget that we see in front of us. And we're suggesting that the tax increases would be unbearable for people. It's fine for the public sector who get their 4% and they get their cost of living, but there's a whole lot of people out there that haven't had a raise for 3 years. And they're paying municipal taxes. But this multiplies, because I just looked at Dyser's budget. I've been looking at it, and we're spending, I think, $30,000 or $40,000 this year on new carpets and stuff for the library. So it's a double whammy, the library. It's not just what we levy here, but it's also what we levy at the townships. So I think we were elected to do what we see. Cease is right. And so is Jennifer. We don't know what's going to happen next year, but we don't know that in the municipal sector either. At your council table, you don't know that. You make your decision based on the information in front of you. And quite frankly, this money was raised and tucked away when it, in my opinion, it shouldn't have been. It's not a reserve. It's a piggy bank. And it was taxpayers' money. And it shouldn't have been dealt with that way, but it was. That's history. But now we have a chance to help out the tax levy and still leave $100,000 in the library reserve. So I don't think that's a big penalty. They should never need that amount. So anyway, I'm not for cutting library services, never have been, and nobody at this table is that I know. But this is an opportunity to give ourselves a little bit of leeway here. And I think we should go forward.
Councillor Danielson?
As I said previously, I was concerned about the legality of using what I considered to be reserve funds. And it sounds to me like there is, a truly an ability for those funds to be used. so that operations can continue exactly as what has been planned for this year, giving the library, and, you know, I'm a little bit cautious about, you know, Councillor Carter's comment about, we hope that there will be, you know, a different picture that we're looking at next year, that we won't be looking at the same challenges. I don't feel really confident about, you know, hoping. I don't like the idea of kicking the can down the road in many of the recommendations that are being made, because I think that we're going to be continually looking at further challenges going forward. But to Councillor Dayu's comment about, well, we don't have enough time to plan, if you're allowed to go ahead with the operations as being recommended by the library board, by using the surplus funds, there is time to plan over the next year for how we might deal with 2027. I know one of the things that I have commented on, and I know that we can't guide how the library board operates, but I see in the presentation that you have said, Ms. Brown, that you have 597 programs that you offer. That's all attached to staff and staff time. And I just wonder if there has been a solid review of those programs, attendance at those programs, compared to the amount of staff time and cost associated with them. I know that there's a lot of partnerships that I'm not sure if partnerships are included in the 500 and some programs that have been identified. But, you know, to take a careful look at the value of those programs, at the attendance or use of those programs compared to the cost of staff time that's attached to them. You've got time to look at those sorts of things over the next year. And I don't see that by, you know, I'm not entirely happy about it, what appears to be attacking the library. But I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Carter, that I mean, there's like a piggy bank of what at the end of this year might be, you know, in the area of $450,000. Use it. If we can legally use it, then I think that, you know, if it doesn't impact what's being proposed for operations for the next year, there's time to do additional planning. So I can't go against that recommendation in the end. I'm concerned about it and how it's going to impact subsequent years. But I think that, you know, I can agree with the recommendation that's being made.
Councillor Ryle?
Sounds to me like I might have not got all the information properly understood. What I'm hearing is we're not wiping out the entire surplus reserve. Is that correct? All right, because I was of the opinion that we were going to end up with something like around 10, 12,000 bucks left, and then we were not going to be able to do anything with it. So we're going to have a surplus, whatever the right word is for the extra money. There's going to be approximately 6 digits still left in the fund. Is that correct? Will there be more than 6 digits left in the fund? All right, that changes my
Public
opinion.
can't hear you nodding your head, Councillor Carter.
Well, we're just agreeing with him.
Okay, so in that case, there is a
Okay.
cushion for 2027. But there's also the opportunity that we may have to come to the table, pony up in 2027. And as long as we understand that, I get it. I'm fine.
Gary?
Just Ms. Robson could probably provide some clarity on the number.
Yes, currently with the 2026 budget numbers, the library would have a balance of just over $385,000. However, right now it is looking like 25 will also end in a surplus of over $50,000 at a minimum. So that will then add to that. So it will be over.
Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I don't, well, I know nobody on this table, council is in favor of, you know, getting rid of libraries or trying to run the program down, just like all our municipalities do, all the councils. But we have priorities as when you're elected here. This is the taxpayers' money that we're dealing with. I mean, and I'm not trying to say the libraries are at the top of the list or the bottom of the list. But we don't know what's going to happen next year with bridges in Dysart, or what the county is going to have to do, what highways and on and on. And every department has the same. So, I mean, we only wish that every department had a $400,000 reserve set up. But this is taxpayers' money. And we're trying to do what's best for the less fortunate people in the county here for their taxes, the tax levy. And I agree that that we should use this money to cut the levy back. But I just want all the people who really support the library, like all these lovely ladies here, that we're not trying to pick on the libraries. We're looking after all the taxpayers in the county of Haliburton, and it's a priority. That's what our job is. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, thanks for all the good comments. I don't think there's anyone here that disagrees with the premise that the reserve is more of a surplus and it could be spent down. I think that is understood. I certainly don't disagree with that. My only question here is with what assurance can we say this time next year, the request that will inevitably be considerably higher will not be turned down because it punches up our percentage levy just by too much. It's not about spending down the surplus. It's about the gamble that we're taking that the current investments will never be brought up to where it was before. And I just don't feel I have the assurance that can be avoided.
Councillor Shell.
That's just sort of like the pay me now or pay me later concept, though. So we give the 337,000 this year and keep the reserves, but then next year we could be in the same situation where we still have to use those reserves because we put the money out this year. I'm not sure I follow what you're saying. I mean, obviously there's never a guarantee about how each year over year a budget's going to look, but we either put it out now or we have to put it out later to get the same level of service, correct?
Councillor Danielson.
Well, just to agree with Councillor Shell, I mean, there is no guarantee. Yeah, I mean, this council cannot make that guarantee because the next budget will be passed by a totally different group. So, I mean, that's the unfortunate part of it.
Other questions, comments? Right.
Just a comment. Hopefully, the next council will be as compassionate about library services as this one, and they will fund it for the needs they have. That's all. I can't believe they wouldn't because it's so important.
All right. Other questions? Councillor Carter.
Just to look at, the other recommendations so that they're not lost here. I think again, looking at this extraordinary year and really taking a hard look at roads and so on, and recognizing that there was, a possibility to drag part of, this year's plan into next year. So that, that was the reasoning on the roads. On some of the other things, like the GIS, the GIS was, there was a couple of parts to it. There was the part that said, hey, we've got this real project that we need to update where we are today to, to meet all the needs of the 911 and et cetera. So we looked at that as being a project that needed, well, I think it is a little over a half a year of work. And then there were a lot of more, I guess I'm going to say, softer, undefined needs going forward. So the idea was, this year we know we need to do this project. Let's do the project, and then we can evaluate in the future what we're going to need in the future. Because perhaps the person who's best needed to do the project is not the person that you need for the future. So the idea it was that let's not hire somebody full-time this year. Let's do this project and then evaluate. And I think the one on the grant writer, that was a situation where theoretically, okay, we talked to other people and we should be able to get more in grants and it will cost us to hire this person. And, I think the idea from the committee was prove it. If you want to go out and get a temp or a part-time person to do it, let's see that actually can take place. One of our challenges here is that when we hire people and they get on staff, it's not something where you can, and you don't want to do this, hire somebody full time and then get rid of them after a year, because that doesn't work. So what we're trying to say is let's try it from the perspective of trying to find a temp or something who can prove themselves, and then in the future years we may decide that this is a worthwhile thing to have. So everything that was looked at this year was looked at a degree of I guess, a degree of looking at everything in such a way that we had to try to reduce the tax levy on the population. The numbers were just too high when we add the 1.5% and the 0.5% in these levies. I mean, we were getting very close to 10%. That's the bridge that I'm going to die on here. We're looking to try to protect our taxpayers and spend their money wisely. So let's look at everything and see what it is that we can do. So,
Councillor Dennison, Councillor Dave.
I'm extremely concerned about removing the $500,000 from the sustainability account, particularly given the fact that there is $0 in reserve for roads. And it's kicking the can down the road, and I'm hearing that there's a hope that or a statement that this is an extraordinary year and things won't be so bad next year. We have no idea about the validity of that whatsoever. I'm afraid that next year will be even worse than this year, and that kicking the can down the road and saying, well, we can add that back in next year, is like, we have no idea whether we're going to be able to do that or not. So I'm really quite concerned about that $500,000. About the grant writer, I would say, I'm a little worried about the use of the word temp. If we're going to hire a grant writer, whether it's a part-time person or a contracted person, are we going to get the same level of skill that we would if we went out and hired somebody to do it? Because I do see that it's kind of the kind of position that zeroes itself out as far as cost is concerned, and maybe even beneficial to us. One other argument that I wanted to make was which kind of works in reverse, it doesn't save us anything, was the other positions where the committee did not want the municipalities to have to pay for the 50% of the cost. I can't understand why the county would provide a service to the lower tiers and the lower tiers wouldn't pay for that. And if my understanding is correct, if we paid for the full cost of that position, it goes into the levy, which is then assessed to the lower tiers. What's the difference? I mean, you're going to pay for it anyway, one way or the other. And I don't know that there's been a calculation to see what the difference in the amount of money would be.
Gary?
Sorry, thank you, Warden, through Deputy Warden Danielson. So on the second part of your question, yeah, it would be it's the math on how it's spread across, because it's not an equitable or equal application of the cost from municipality to municipality on the so that would be a little difficult giving the exact number what it would be. Getting into the cost sharing piece, we took a simplistic formula on it. Eventually we would hope to gear it into, it would become more of a user service where you would actually pay for what you use versus a flat rate fee. This was just an introduction into the concept of cost sharing with the county keeping 50% of the cost, because we would probably take the dominant number of the role. So that's the premise we used on the cost sharing. Just one other point of clarification, and it may be semantics, but with respect to the reserves, the reserve we're talking about that's zeroed out is actually the bridges and large culverts. The roads reserve is funded. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Robinson, on that. There's a bit of a difference between the two. And we're using the dedicated capital levy, which is the 1.5% per year that Councillor Carter just mentioned. That goes to supplement to build up that we're trying to get that levy to $1 million, that reserve $2 million to be sustainable on the bridges and large culverts piece. There's two components to it, but your point's well taken on that element. So,
Councillor Dave.
Thanks very much. And thanks to Councillor Carter for the clarification about the grant writer. I didn't understand that it was, as you had just said. I was also in mind, you know, hey ho, let's prove this first before we commit long term. So my question for clarification, perhaps to Ms. Robinson, is on the budget summary report, when this recommendation is put forward, it says the council liaisons recommend to not include the position. This will have a zero impact on the levy increase. So where would the money come for the temporary or the trial run?
It's noted as 0% or $0 levy increase because we did increase the grant funding by 120,000 if that were being included. So in the draft, the 7.72% tax rate increase includes 120,000 new wages for the position and 120,000 new grant monies to offset it, because it's the assumption that they will at a minimum obtain 120,000 in the 2026. So if we were to remove it, it wouldn't affect that. It wouldn't change the dollar, the net levy increase.
Thank you. I understand that.
Councillor Carter.
Yeah, I think a couple things for clarification. The idea on this $500,000 on the roads, this is not kicking it down the road. This is the fact that we have an opportunity this year, our roads in significantly proper shape, that we don't need to spend the money this year. The idea on the costs for social services and so on, you know, yes, it is a bit of a hope, but it's I'm on the Jack committee along with a couple of other counselors. I'm on the housing committee. We've also worked with the city of Kawartha Lakes, and we all expect that this is an extraordinary year, and next year is not going to be the same. So it's more than just a hope. It is based on a lot of people's judgment that it won't be the same, and so we're faced with this large bill this year. It's a little bit like replacing your roof. You might have the bill this year, but you hope you don't have to replace a roof every year. It is an extraordinary confluence of events this year. So we need to that's why we need to look at these extraordinary measures within the whole budget process.
Councillor Dennison.
I'm sorry, I just don't have that same reliance on or that hope. I don't have any reliance whatsoever on our provincial government, and they're not doing the same thing to us over and over again. I think we're going to be faced with the same kind of challenges next year and the year after that. And if you're not going to spend the money on a road this year, it's got to be added into whatever was planned for next year. It's definitely kicking the can down the road in my mind. You can shake your head all you like, but the money has to be spent at some point in time. The more you delay it, the more it's going to cost, and the more it'll be added to other projects that you need to do in the following year. I can't, I mean, I'm only one vote, but I can't agree.
Councillor Perry.
Well, I guess you've seen what the committee suggested.
Mhm.
So unless you're advocating a 10 or 11% tax increase, then throw out some alternatives how you'd cut the budget.
Well, if you're aiming that question at me, I mean, I agreed with the recommendation that was made about the library. I can see some of the smaller items, but I don't. We're not proposing a 10% increase, and we're proposing a 7 point.
You won't take that 500,000.
That's not my understanding.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Just for clarity, I think I don't want to speak for Councillor Ferry, but it's the addition of the 7.7% plus the 1.5% capital levy plus the 0.5% community health levy. That would take you to the higher number.
Okay.
Yeah. So just for clarity, so the numbers proposed, both the 4.63% and the 7.7% do not include the baseline levies, the dedicated baseline levies, one for community health, one for the capital investment piece.
I thought the
No.
7% plus was inclusive of all.
No.
Councillor Ryle.
I'm going to change subjects here, but the idea is good. I think this 0.5% for community health levy is way overdue. I think the unpredictability of the funding from the provincial government is crystal clear. I'm working strategically right now with the health unit, and there's a lot of great conversation going on. There's not a whole lot of money coming out of it. So at the end of the day, I can see that becoming a status quo situation. I can see that the monies are either going to be frozen, but if any increase, it'll be significantly small. And that increase will be not enough to offset the costs that we're going to be incurring. So to understand that and predict it and to be able to plan for it with a 0.5%, to me, is the right way to go. So I'm going to thank you guys for putting that together, because I have no trust, as Councillor Danielson said, with the provincial government coming to the table with a whole lot of anything.
Councillor David.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Councillor Ryle. I do have a couple of questions for clarification, though, on that levy recommendation. It's presented in the summary report as a compound interest table. And so my question is, are you suggesting that we add to this until 2026 with no drawdowns during that time? Or is it considered more like a pooled fund that we would be using every year? So to be clearer, the things that we're currently already spending that are in silos for community health, would those continue to be a separate part of the levy in years to come as we build up this reserve? Or is it a reserve that we would be drawing down effectively, I would guess, almost to zero every year?
Gary?
So through to Councillor Dowd, so it's kind of a combination of everything you said. So it's a compounded levy in the sense you want to build it to reach the critical mass, right? And so initially going forward, you're looking at it's not about us creating programs. It's not of us becoming a program provider. Is there significant gaps within the services provided at any one of from the broader community health, which we include everything from the HHS Foundation all the way through to community paramedicine, professional healthcare recruitment, harm reduction, addiction, community outreach. All those things are in that umbrella. And so what we're finding over time is traditionally it's a non-jurisdictional piece for the county, but we're drawn into a number of areas because there are gaps within the system, rightly or wrongly, whether we're saying we're taking on the role of the province. I mean, that's not an argument I want to get into, because whether it's true or not, the gap still exists, right? And we believe in our analysis going forward, and I don't want to speak for the liaison committee, but this is how it's played to them, is that somebody has to step into that breach and make sure that the most vulnerable people in our community are being properly serviced with access to the services they need. And I think in the detailed report we put forward, we identified a number of areas where we see this could happen. So early on, when it's building up in its smaller levels, because you just use the piece of the CSWB side of things, is that it's significantly underfunded. Right. So what happens is we get opportunities to come in mid-budget cycle that we can participate in, but then we have to do fiscal gymnastics to try to find the money to support in between. This gives us a stability where we can go forward as, if this is approved, we'll create a policy specific to the use of this fund. And it could even include things like capping the fund at a certain dollar amount and reconfiguring going forward, with also creating a basement for it, where once it hits that, you go back up to build it up again. But if you look at it from the broader construct of getting to the just compounding stuff year over year, if you go back to thinking, this was like literally my first day here, was the donation that was made for the imaging system through HHS Foundation. Right. This is now, once you get to the larger numbers of the program, you now have the adaptability and flexibility of a program whereby you now have the money. You can make those type of significant donations without creating spikes in your budget or taking away from something else. And even to the point where, as you get into the larger numbers, you can now start focusing where that money goes into certain sectors of broader community health. Is it harm reduction? Is it housing? Is it this? Like, and so you have that flexibility, but in doing so, you're not creating another impact on the tax base because you've already built it in over time. And so it's about that sustainability and stability being created. But also now we can report out based on how it's being used and set aside core funding now on an annual basis based on what comes forward to council or comes forward through me, through our work plan and business planning system as to what we need to function for functionality on community safety, well-being, but also professional healthcare recruitment, and any of the number of things I mentioned that are much more detailed in the report. So it's kind of one of the all of the above, but I think the principle of bringing it forward now is because of, to Councillor Ryle's point, where the predictability on the funding demands is kind of up in the air. It gives us the ability to adapt to it without having to create spikes within the tax base over time.
Councillor McKechnie and then
Yeah, like, is this library budget, I'm just talking about the library budget right now. Is it gonna go up 10% every year? Is that what, like last year it was 10%? This, it seems like it's 10%. Is this what we're assuming? Now, all our other departments, I mean, the ones that are, you know, so essential to our community, like our EMS and our fire departments and our roads, director of road, like, to me, where does this money come from? There's only one person who pays. So what are we gonna do? Just send a memo, Gary, that be prepared, everybody, in 3 years from now, it's not gonna be 10%, it's gonna be 12 or 14 or 15% your taxes? Like, we're here to manage this money. And like, I know you can't assume anything, like, everybody's worried about, you know, what's gonna happen. Liz, you're worried about, is it really gonna be reduced, the housing cost? But who knows? Who knows anything, like, in regard, what are we gonna need for roads next year, Sil? What are you gonna need for an ambulances? What are you gonna need for security? Say we get hacked, Michael? Like, this is crazy. You know, we're talking about things that are pretty well off the wall. Like, we've got a lot of money here and we're trying to handle it with the best interests of our community. So, thank you.
yeah, Councillor Dale.
Thank you. If I could just perhaps respond to Councillor McKechnie's question about whether we could expect a 10% increase year on year. I would only point out that the 9.x% increase proposed this year is almost entirely step increases. It's COLA, it's, you know, it's cost of living, COLA, and your regular step increases, which in all of our county departments are fitted as standard. We don't ask, should we be paying, you know, more money for step increases in COLA? We just do it because that's what we do. And so the overwhelming majority of this increase is what we take for granted as necessary in other departments.
Okay, other comments or questions? Seeing none, before I ask for the resolution, Gary, I'd just like to thank the committee very much for their hard work, their creativity, the tough choices they've had to make, and for the recommendations. And I certainly support what we've come up with. Resolution.
Thank you. The Haliburton County 2026 budget presentation be received, and further that the draft 2026 budget be referred to the December 10th, 2025 meeting at County Council for consideration for approval.
Could someone move? Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Council, I think we'll take a 15-minute break. Good, thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. We're down to the consent agenda.
That items listed under the heading of consent agenda for November 26, 2025 be adopted as presented.
If someone move, Councillor Shell, second by Councillor Carter. All in favor? It's carried. Office of the CAO, Gary.
Thank you, Warden Burton. Just a brief verbal update. I think it's apropos to the discussions we had this morning with respect to the budget and the financial challenges we're facing. So with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, I sit as the CAO lead on infrastructure and finance. So tomorrow morning, I'm heading down after council. So we're meeting with the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister and Associate Minister of Municipal Affairs to discuss some of the fiscal contract we talked about, but also the need for the province to more formally address the infrastructure needs, not only for all municipalities across Ontario, but also specific to the small rural municipalities like ourselves that face unique challenges across Eastern Ontario that aren't faced in the GTHA. So that's so I'll be spending my day there primarily doing that. I will also be joining Councillor Ryle and Dr. Piggott, and we'll be meeting with Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, around the financing pieces going forward with the public health unit as well. So that's my day tomorrow.
Any questions or comments? You're gonna be busy.
No kidding.
Yeah, good.
Why didn't you have lunch?
Okay, nomination results for the Office of County Warden.
That reports CLK 03/2025 nomination results for the Office of County Warden for 2026 be received as resignation.
Have someone move? Councillor Danielson, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. Council meeting schedule?
That staff report CLK 04/2025 be approved.
Someone move? Councillor McKechnie, second by Councillor Shell. All in favor? It's carried. Done. So, finance.
Yeah. So, yes. So we'll just be receiving these reports as information.
All right,
Warden Burton.
could I have someone move?
Yeah, that budget summary report that be received for information.
Councillor Ferry, second by Councillor Dennison. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Yep. Go ahead.
So with that, I'll ask Ms. Tiffin to provide some background for council with respect to the proclamation we're dealing with today.
Good morning again, Warden Burton and members of council. The County of Haliburton Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee is seeking County Council's endorsement and support to proclaim December 3rd, 2025 as International Day of Persons with Disabilities in Haliburton County. The annual observance of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities was proclaimed in 1992 by the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 47/3. The observance of the day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues, mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities, and increase awareness of gains to be derived from the integration of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life. It's a day for us to promote the full and equal participation of persons with disabilities and to take action for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in all aspects of society and development.
Great. Any questions? Resolution?
Whereas December 3rd each year is observed by the United Nations as International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and whereas the day is an opportunity to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness of the situation of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life. And whereas the County of Haliburton is committed to accessibility and ensuring that people of all ages and abilities enjoy the same opportunities as they live, work, visit, retire, and invest in our community. Now, therefore, be resolved that the County of Haliburton proclaim December 3rd, 2025 as International Day of Persons with Disabilities within the County of Haliburton.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. The bylaws? Yep. Okay.
That bylaw 4325 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of November 26, 2025 meeting of Haliburton County Council be considered to be read a first, second, and third time.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Perry, second by Councillor McKechnie. All in favor? It's carried. Adjournment.
That the November 26, 2025 meeting, Haliburton County Council be adjourned at 11:16 a.m.
Could have someone move? Councillor McKechnie, second by Deputy Warden Danielson. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.